Great. I think everybody's here. We're going to make a start. So welcome to this fantastic moment that we have been awaiting for a long time, where we can come together and celebrate the arrival this month of the International Nonprofit Accounting Standard. So if you're on social media, you can use the hashtag INPAS arrives 2025. So it's not quite right on there. INPAS arrives 2025 is the hashtag. So my name is Samantha Musoke. I've been the IFR for NPO project manager since 2019, since the project started with Humentum. And I'm now the director of INPAS adoption. And I'm delighted to be your host today. I'm dialing in from Uganda, and I'm sure you're all dialing in from all over the world. I know many of you have been following this project for the last 6 years, or have joined along the way. And some of you, maybe this is your very, very first time connecting with us. You're all incredibly welcome, and it's a real delight to share this moment with you. Do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us which country you're in. If you have a message that you'd like to share with the world about this moment, then please do share it there. But please do keep your microphones off if that's okay. So today we're going to be recognizing our global stakeholders. We want to appreciate those of you that have been part of this journey. We want to reflect on the X years that's got us to this point, and we want to celebrate with some announcements and finally look forward to what is coming next. If we can move to the next slide. Now, unfortunately, it's hard to talk about INPAS without some acronyms. So I just want to do a bit of an acronym warm up so that when these things are mentioned, it's not so overwhelming. So INPAS, International Nonprofit Accounting Standard, the IFR for NPO project, which for the last 6 years has developed INPAS, stands for International Financial Reporting for Non-Profit Organizations. CIPFA, one of the partners that worked with Humentum, is Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. We might also hear about the IASB, the International Accounting Standards Board, and the standards that they produce, the IFRS. We might hear about IFRS for SMEs, which is International Financial Reporting for Small and Medium Entities. We might hear about IPSAS, the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, and IFAC, which publishes IPSAS, the International Federation of Accountants. And finally, we might hear about IFAS, the International Federation of Accounting Standard Setters. So sorry about that, but at least you can't say that you didn't know. And if you do hear those mentioned, hopefully it won't be so overwhelming. So without further ado, let's move into looking at the journey since I think about 2011 that's got us here. And if, Jenna, if you could bring in Tim Boyes-Watson and Karen Bradshaw to be pinned here, that would be super. So I think one of the first moments was when, Tim, you were back in 2011, you were the CEO of Mango, and I think you published an article called Standing Up for Standards, which gained quite a bit of reaction. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but I'd like first to speak to Karen Bradshaw. And I know until very recently, you were the CEO of Charity Finance Group. And I think I'd love to hear from you how you picked up this article and what happened until we got to the 2014 survey that we can see on the screen here. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you. Well, having come from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, another acronym I'll save you from, I was familiar with the plethora of international standards, but perplexed by the absence of there being anything equivalent for not-for-profits. And our members at the Charity Finance Group, particularly those working globally, were challenged by the lack of consistency across territories. So in 2011, we proposed an event between sector bodies, representatives and regulators to explore what would be the steps for achieving an international not-for-profit reporting standard. And the event was hosted in July 2012 by MHA McIntyre Hudson. And it led to discussions with the Consultative Committee of Accountancy Bodies for research to be undertaken. And in November of that year, Mango and CFDG, as it was then, issued a joint press release supporting the research being undertaken. I used to write a column for Third Sector magazine. In March 2014, I used the advent of Pancake Day in the UK to talk about what had happened. So what I said was traditions and preferences have led to a multitude of approaches to pancakes. Some go for thin, large ones, which they drizzle with sticky syrups and lemon and sugar. Others prefer thick, fluffy ones. Some even like theirs with bacon. Whatever the local variations, the basic ingredients are the same world over. Pancake is shorthand. Whether you're in Cape Town or Colwyn Bay, you have a reasonable idea of what to expect, and that's reassuring. But in the financial world, can you say the same about reporting and accounting? We lack a similar shorthand reference. When we talk about the not-for-profit sector, we're thinking about organisations whose primary objectives are to provide goods and services for the public, community or social benefit. We accept that if equity is provided, there is support to the primary objectives rather than looking at financial return to shareholders. But the terms are not universal, and very different legal frameworks exist when comparing financial performance of these organisations across the world. So can you honestly say, but for the variations and local approaches and ingredients, you generally know what you're getting? So basically, we didn't think we were. And the publication of the Consultative Committee Accountancy Bodies study was the first authoritative study that said actually there was an appetite for these things. And in February 2014, they had, I think, 605 usable responses from 179 countries. 72% agreed that international accounting standards would be useful. And the support for it was strongest in America, Latin America, and Asia, especially with countries that didn't have national standards. So there was clearly a will, but was there a way? Enter IFR for MPO, a massive undertaking with a huge ambition. And I noted back in 2014 that there was a real importance that the UK's role in developing accounting standards should not be used to impose UK ideas internationally. So I'm delighted at what we've witnessed and to have been a very small part of a truly international endeavour to bring about standards which give that standardisation without losing the space for local nuance. It's been many years since those initial conversations, but they say good things come to those who wait. So well done to all involved.
Thank you so much, Karen. Super. I love the pancake analogy. It's perfect. I'm going to hand the baton over to Tim and Jenna, if you want to move the slide. So we had this great research, Tim. What happened next? Surely that was a done deal. What happened next?
Well, you would think so, right? With all those voices. But actually, when I look back on this journey, the one thing that really strikes me is this is a rare story of local and minority voices overcoming those of the powerful. So what happened next is a group formed to try and lobby on behalf of the recommendation, if you like, from that study. And partly as a result of that, the International Accounting Standards Board included in its 2015 consultation a question, so building on this research, should we take on the task of setting standards for the non-profit sector? Should that be in the scope of our board? And again, just like the 605 respondents previously, a huge number of people wrote letters in to the International Accounting Standards Board saying, yes, you should do this. There's a need for it. But unfortunately, some powerful actors, the International Federation of Accountants and the Institute for Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, wrote letters to say that there wasn't sufficient evidence of demand. And another point, which I think is fair, that the International Accounting Standards Board doesn't have the competency, doesn't understand the non-profit sector well enough. So the end result of that was they said, no, we're not going to take it on. But fortunately, they left the door fractionally open by saying, if there's a group of willing professionals, accounting professionals, able to take it on, then we would bless that endeavour and not get in their way, essentially. And of course, being activists like we are, that was enough for us. No didn't really mean no in this case, and we could push for that. And that's really where Ian Carruthers came in, who was at that time chair of CIPFA Standards and was just about to be made the chair of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. And he was somebody that I'd met back at that CFG symposium in 2012 or whenever it was. So there's starting to be enough of a group globally and in some of the accounting professional corridors to get this moving. And that's where I think I'm handing over again, isn't it?
Right,
Sam?
thank you very much, Tim. You're definitely not one to take no for an answer. Can we move to the next slide and bring in Tamba Momo? So one of the next things that happened was the International Forum of Accounting Standard Setters created a they were meeting anyway, and they were discussing the outcome from the IASB, the answer no that they got, and discussing what to do about it. Now, Tamba, welcome. You were the Auditor General of Sierra Leone at the time. You were in that meeting of IFAS. Tell me briefly what happened.
Thank you very much, Sam, and greetings, everyone. So my name is Tamba Momo, and I was, at the time, actually Deputy Auditor General at Sierra Leone. So I started attending IFAS meetings back in 2013 in London. And at every of those meetings that I attend, there is not a meeting that they will not talk about the problem of not having an international standard for non-profit organizations. And whenever they mention the issue of not having the standard, the accompanying problems of having multiple reports being produced for one project so that the donors are satisfied for the various support that they've made to the project. It was also very administratively a burdensome task, and it was very expensive. So in Toronto, Canada, in 2016, at the IFAS meeting, spring meeting, I think it was, the IPSAS-B board had already informed us that for whatever reasons I can't remember, that they were not prepared to take on this project. But then at that meeting, the IFRS Foundation also announced that they, for the purpose of their mandate and what they do, they don't think looking at non-profits is something that they'll be able to show interest in. So I stood up at that meeting and asked a very simple and very important question. I asked the question, if the accounting standard setting bodies in this room, everybody was there, say they don't have it's either not within their mandate, or they don't have the resources, or for whatever reason, they're not able to take on this accounting problem, who is going to take up this problem? The room went quiet for a while. Then Ian got up. Ian at the time was IPSAS-B chair, and he offered to lead a group of volunteers. It's a coalition of the willing. And myself and a few other colleagues joined this group, and we started discussing some of the issues. And to date, I am pleased that we now have a whole international accounting standard that we are launching. So this is the role that I played in this process, and I thank everyone for the role that they have played, including the donors and other esteemed colleagues as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tamba, for being that brave person who would stand up and ask the difficult question. That's super. Thank you, Tamba. So from that point, the next thing that happened was that over 2017, 2018, Mango merged to form Humentum with some other organizations, and Tim recruited me into Humentum. I was introduced to Ian Carruthers, who Tim mentioned, and we also worked with Jeff Mechanic from the FASB, the Federal Accounting Standards Board it's not the federal, it's the Financial Accounting Standards Board in the USA, and together with ACCA Global. And we put together a presentation at the Humentum conference saying, is the time now right? Now, that was very well received. And then in 2019, we used the feedback from that presentation to develop funding proposals. We worked together with the Ford Foundation, the Oak Foundation. We got funding, and we were able to start IFR for NPO. And I do want to just really call out Ford Foundation and Open Society Foundations. They did so much more than provide money. They asked really important questions. They helped us strategize and think through how we were going to eat this elephant. Lots of other people thought it was completely impossible and undoable, and they really backed the vision, which was incredibly brave of them. And the photo that you can see there, there's me and Tim, who you've met already. There's Ian Carruthers in the front with me, who we'll meet later. Jeff from FASB in the back behind me, and then John Bernstein from the Ford Foundation. And that was a really, really momentous occasion. And this partnership between CIPFA and Humentum has continued to be really vital all the way through, with CIPFA having that accountancy reputation among accounting standard setters, and Humentum having that reputation within the sector with funders and non-profits. Right, let's move on. So 2020 was a year of building, and I'd like to bring in at this point Kenneth Makanga, Geraldine Limborg, and Chris Peach. So this was a really important year of building all the advisory groups, the networks of volunteers, so that we could actually do this work. We were a tiny team, but we had built together this group. So there was a technical advisory group of accounting standard setters that was really formed from the INPAS not-for-profit working group. There was a practitioner advisory group of auditors and NPOs, a donor reference group of government funders, multilaterals and foundations, a governance group, and of course, an amazing network of country champions. So I want to introduce you to some of those. So hopefully Kenneth and Geraldine are also in the room. As we wait for them, Chris Peach, welcome. You used to lead the Australian Accounting Standards Board, and we've been fortunate enough to have you as the chair of the project governance group, which has acted really as an independent group overseeing the standard development process and ensure it meets international expectations. So my question is, as an international and as an experienced standard setter yourself, what are the things that a country or a jurisdiction would want to have confidence about if it's considering adopting a standard? And crucially, based on your inside seat, do you think INPAS is adoptable? Chris.
Thanks, Sam. And just wanted to add my congratulations to everyone on a very, very well done project indeed. So one of the things when I became chair of the governance group was actually thinking about that question. So we wanted to make sure that there was a credible standard setting base with the support and involvement of a credible international body, which has turned out to be absolutely tick. We've got IFRS for SMEs as the base, and we have the involvement of the International Accounting Standards Board. Then secondly, we wanted to make sure that there was a really rigorous due process, and we had widespread and very deep input and feedback into all of the proposals. And absolutely, that's a tick. There's been some incredible feedback received. And certainly the governance group has been very happy with the way that all of that feedback's been addressed and accounted for. And then most importantly, do the standards actually meet users' needs? So are they actually created so that the benefits to the users outweigh the cost to the preparers? And I think absolutely the involvement of all the advisory groups and all of the feedback would say that those standards have come out absolutely shining. And then lastly, are they capable of being implemented and enforced? And again, I think all of the feedback from the various advisory groups has indicated that yes, that is in fact the case. So I would absolutely say that yes, they are very definitely adoptable standards, and I am particularly looking forward to seeing who's going to pick them up first. And I hope it's Australia.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we have actually issued our first license to Australia. They've used some of the exposure drafts. So thank you so much, Chris. Kenneth, let me come to you. Kenneth, you are an audit partner with BDO East Africa, and you were nominated to the Practitioner Advisory Group by the Forum of Firms. That's a group of the world's leading audit firms housed by IFAC. Now, I know that your audit clients include small and medium non-profit organizations in Uganda, where I am, and East Africa. So my question for you is, do you feel that the needs and the perspectives of organizations like your client were reflected in the discussions and in the debates that we had at the PAG?
Thank you, Sam, and greetings from Uganda, here, Kampala. Like Sam mentioned, I am a certified public accountant based in Kampala. And today is very amazing. That happens to be Independence Day in Uganda. And we are launching this, so it will be stuck in my memory forever. Back to your question, for the time that I've been involved in this project since 2020, I was mesmerized by how practical, how relevant really the discussions and the topics were to the NPOs that I have dealt with. For the 19 years, I've provided audit experience with NGOs, NPOs in Uganda. All the topics I would say were relevant, but two actually stood out, and they were in the first week when I started interacting with the rest of the group. In Uganda, most of the NPOs are recipients of foreign aid as expected. Just the definition on who is an NPO had always been a challenge. The regulators, depending on the stakeholder, an NPO would feel they need to meet the definition. When you ask the taxman, they will tell you that doesn't happen. But coming to the standard and the frameworks of the standard, just defining a reporting entity that meets the definition of an NPO was actually life-changing. And for many NPOs in Uganda, that's going to be very relevant. The other second and the last one that I just want to share, just for the benefit of time, I'll keep it on those two aspects, is the fact that many of the NPOs that have dealt with for the 19 years were always keen to make sure that their financial reports reflect a narrative aspect of the social aspects that they do handle. And when this standard was touching to that specific subject, I was smiling ear to ear. So for many of the NPOs, and actually I'm shocked that Australia has adopted this faster than Uganda, but for many of the NPOs in Uganda, this is the best package that they have been looking for. And I'm very grateful and very lucky that I was part of this discussion. I submit.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. It's been an honor having you on the PAG. And let me come to Geraldine Limborg. You're the Director of Operations at the Oak Foundation in Switzerland. And I really want to thank you because Oak Foundation, you haven't only provided funding for IFR for NPO, but you've been really strong advocate of the harmonized grant reporting aspect within INPAS, which we'll find out more about later. And you've also been the chair of our donor reference group. So I wanted to ask you really for your brief reflections on chairing that group. What have been some of the joys and challenges maybe? Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Indeed, I'm passionate about these standards, and as chair of the donor reference group, my role has really been to bring donors together. What's been fascinating in the process is we've had some turnover in the group, and the overriding principle of everybody was joining the group was always, let's make things easier for NPOs. Now, I'm not saying that the standards are easy or easy to implement. I think, you know, it's not the case. But obviously, if you go towards harmonized reporting, it does make it much easier to kind of focus resources on what type of standard. And it basically ultimately means less time spent on reporting. And that ultimately that means more impact. And I think all of the donors around the virtual room, we never met physically, all of the donors were really behind that message. And obviously, the donor reference group has made sure that the perspective of various donors and their constraints are taken into account. And I have to say, I work for a private foundation. It's a lot easier to align to standards than it is if you're a multilateral agency, for example. So that's been one of the challenges. The joy being how we kind of really united against the ultimate aim. It's been really exciting to see funders collaborating like this. And I think it shows a real shift towards shared responsibility and towards long-term trust as well. So we're not just backing a technical fix. We're really helping to build a stronger and more efficient sector. And these days, we need it more than ever. So thank you. The work with you and the team, Sam, has been fantastic, and hats off for all of the energy that's gone into this. Over back to you.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Super. Thank you, all three of you. I'm going to move on now to the next phase of the project, which was the really important phase that Chris mentioned about public consultation. And I'd love to bring in Nathaniel Congo at this point. So 21 to 24 was this period of intense public consultation. We issued a consultation paper. We decided on the name for the guidance. We issued an exposure draft, or ED, in 3 parts, together with a number of explanatory videos. We held webinars and we held regional events in Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia. And we received hundreds of comments and responses. Now, Nathan, welcome. You are the West Africa Regional Finance Director for Muso Health, based in Côte d'Ivoire. And you were one of the respondents who shared your views. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I'm just interested to know if that's something that you'd ever done before. I know you're a finance professional. Have you ever engaged in these kinds of international consultations before? And how did you find that experience of inputting to an international standard?
Okay, thank you, Sam, and good morning to everyone. In fact, yes, this was the first time for me to participate to this kind of consultation about accounting now. But I wanted to do it firstly because for me this was an important missing piece in our sector. And the second thing for me was really to have my say as a practitioner and professional in the sector, and knowing also the context of West Africa and Francophone countries. So this was really interesting, but it was not easy because the documents we received were so dense. And also coupled with our responsibilities in our NGOs, it was not leaving us enough time to review them. But at the end, I think that the idea of having webinars and videos was very helpful, and this made the task much easier. So really thank you for open the door for us to participate as practitioners. This was really good, and I think the input also valuable. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel, and thank you for taking the time and effort, because it wasn't easy. We tried to make it easier, but it was a big lift, and thank you. And all of you in the room who were respondents to our public consultations, thank you very much. So I'd like to now bring in Siham Bortkosh. Now, if you think back to the original survey that was done in 2014, one of the findings was that there was overall support for an accounting standard, but when you read between the lines and the narratives, there actually was different understandings. And for some people, they were talking about grant reporting rather than about whole of entity reporting. So all our efforts and the project up to this point had been focused on the whole of entity financial reporting. But in 2023, we decided to explore the possibility of producing guidance to harmonize grant reporting. Now, Siham, you were involved in previous donor harmonization initiatives like Money Where It Counts. So you were the obvious choice for us to be the technical lead for the working group that developed the content that ended up being INPAS Practice Guide 1 Harmonized Grant Reporting. So Siham, tell us a bit about your experience. I'm sure you could probably write a book, but what things actually stand out for you in that time?
Thanks so much, Sam. It was such a privilege to work with the Supplementary Statement Working Group to develop what's now become INPAS Practice Guide 1. Quite early on in the process, we realised that the supplementary statement had to have some fixed points to make it consistent with INPAS. But at the same time, we also knew that it had to offer some flexibility to accommodate both donor and NPO needs. So we came up with the idea of a basic format that would align with and agree with INPAS and be reconcilable to the INPAS financial statements, with some optional additional columns and notes that could be tailored to provide the information that donors would need and want. I remember I was so conscious of what a unique opportunity we had to address these long-term grant reporting challenges for NPOs that mean that even very, very small NPOs have to cover so many different reporting requirements and sometimes conflicting reporting needs. And to be completely frank, Sam, there were times when I just didn't think we would get there. So, for example, when the technical advisory group quite understandably felt that the supplementary statement that we were designing was outside the scope of general purpose financial reporting. And at those times, Sam, I really want to say that your optimism and tenacity just helped a lot to get us through. And now here we are. So we have INPAS, we have INPAS Practice Guide 1. And as more and more donors adopt or agree to use the practice guide, the positive impact on NPOs will be felt sort of all around the world. I'm personally so incredibly proud of the work that we did on the practice guide to get to today. And I'd really like to personally thank all of the members of the Supplementary Statement Working Group who contributed so much. And also, I'd like to thank you, Sam, and Karen, and the other CIPFA representatives that I worked with, who, between all of you, have made this happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Siham. And thank you again to the members of that group who you can see pictured there. And on to the next slide. Now, obviously, donor support for this endeavour in general has been absolutely crucial. We've had the members of the donor reference group who've been fantastic. And they've signed a statement of support, which is up on the IFR for NPO website. It's not saying, because INPAS isn't even published yet, it's not endorsing, I want to make that clear because they signed on that basis, but it's really expressing their support for the purposes and the objectives of the work that we've been doing. So do take a look at that if you want to on the website. Super. Now, the very final part of the journey was us deciding on the name. The name INPAS, International Non-Profit Accounting Standard. And as you can see, looking back from 2011 all the way today, we've really climbed a mountain together. And I'd very much like to thank all of you here who have played a massive part in that. And we're now going to play the video, our launch, our October birth month INPAS video. Which we can't hear. Should we try that
worldwide, delivering impact and improving lives. Their success depends on trust from the communities they serve, their funders, and regulators. Transparency lays the foundation for trust. NPOs demonstrate accountability by sharing clear information about their funding and how resources are used to deliver their missions. Until 2025, there was no international accounting standard for NPOs. This has created inefficiencies, a lack of comparability, and a heavy reporting burden due to multiple formats. That's changing with the International Non-Profit Accounting Standard, or INPAS. INPAS sets the standard for NPO financial reporting globally, helping organizations prepare annual accounts that meet the needs of diverse stakeholders. Countries are already starting to adopt it for use by their NPOs. Accompanying the standard, INPAS Practice Guide 1 introduces a harmonized format for grant reports or supplementary statements. It explains how grant reports should link to the whole of entity accounts, making it easier to audit. Funders played a key role in its development, and it can be used for grantee reporting, streamlining efforts, and saving time. This work started in 2019 with the IFR for NPO project, which was led by CIPFA and Humentum in response to global demand. Today, INPAS is an inclusive standard, shaped with input from national standard setters across 15 countries from all continents. Following due process for international standards, it was validated and improved through consultations with stakeholders in 86 countries. Built on existing accounting standards, INPAS is adapted to meet the unique needs of NPOs, bringing a standalone solution. And it's governed by a newly established public interest entity, the International Non-Profit Reporting Foundation. INPAS is more than just an accounting or compliance exercise. It's a bold step towards transforming financial accountability. It also contributes to solving sector-wide challenges, such as direct funding to local organisations, flexible funding, and fair coverage of support costs. Surprisingly, it does two things at once. It improves quality and reduces the burden of grant reporting. That's a win for everyone: donors, regulators, auditors, and above all, the organisations doing social good. Now's the time to take INPAS off the page and into practice.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenna, for playing that. And now is a wonderful moment where I'm going to invite Anna Blackman, that's CIPFA's CFO, and Jocelyn Boughton, Humentum's co-CEO, to join me. So Anna, welcome. Now, having worked, you're the CEO of the CFO of CIPFA, sorry. So I'd like to hand over to you for what you want to say.
Thank you, Sam, and it's lovely that this day has finally arrived. So congratulations to you and the team. Thought I'd talk a little bit just about the foundation. So I suppose CIPFA's been working with Humentum on the development of INPAS for the past 6 years, and we didn't want the publication of the standard and the project itself to be the end, with just a document on the website. For us, actually, that's the beginning of the journey. I know it's been a long journey to get to this point, but actually it's the beginning of the rest of the journey, as it were. And so it needs to be adopted all over the world in order for the benefits to be realised. There have been just 2 accounting standard setters in the world since the 1990s, one to meet the needs of capital markets and the for-profit organisations, and the other for governments. And neither were really a good fit in the long term for INPAS. So you'll have seen that on the 1st of October, we announced that we're continuing our collaboration with Humentum, and we are jointly creating a new entity, which is the International Non-Profit Reporting Foundation. What that means is INPAS has a long-term independent home, and we can be really confident that the IFRS for NPOs project will have a lasting legacy through that foundation. So having led that development alongside all of the wonderful people you've already talked about and introduced, colleagues at CIPFA feel huge pride in being able to establish this new foundation and take that work forward. So the foundation for us is a really vital step in giving the not-for-profit sector the same professional consistency and credibility that the financial reporting standards have brought for the public and private sectors. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand you over to Jocelyn from Humentum to say a few words as well.
Thanks, Anna. It's been a pleasure to work with you and your colleagues from CIPFA, and really equally as proud at Humentum to be at this stage, coming to the end of the project and moving forward with INPAS. So the launch of INPAS this month really marks a turning point for non-profit financial reporting, and making sure that organisations are equipped as necessary with the global accounting standard that will streamline requirements and hopefully foster financial sustainability. And as I mentioned, we are really proud to establish the foundation and see it going forward, and this next stage after the work on the project. This is now the critical work that builds resilience and shifts powers to the local actors and gives them greater autonomy and influence. Next slide, please. And so we can see at Humentum, we're so proud to have played our part. And if you just look at this global movement and how many people are engaged, and even on this call today, where you are covering from around the world, and we've heard from some of those people in those countries, but this is 15,000 stakeholders in nearly 170 countries. There's not many that are missing from this. So we can say with great confidence that INPAS has been developed by the sector, for the sector. And then lastly, I want to say how INPAS will transform the sector. And we truly believe that the adoption will make that happen, make things fairer, more efficient for NPOs and for funders. You can see some of the benefits here. We've got stronger audit assurance, easier due diligence, improved transparency, accountability, and more consistency. And for the NPOs, there's a reduced burden that saves all those multiple formats. And as an accountant myself of many years and an ex-CFO, I can really truly share the sympathy here. And it's a long way for local NPOs to demonstrate their financial capacity, better information for board members and managers, and certainly more relevant products and services to meet the sector. So back to you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jocelyn and Anna. It's wonderful to have you make these fantastic announcements. So now I'm going to bring in Karen Sanderson. Now, I'm really honoured to introduce you to her. She's the colleague I've worked with most closely over the last 6 years. Karen is the INPAS Technical Director and has really been the primary penholder, haven't you, as leading the INPAS Secretariat. Karen can explain the thinking behind every single paragraph in INPAS. Minutes to walk us through the primary features.
Thank you very much, Sam. And I kind of feel that I might be a party pooper in some way if we start to get too much into the technical. So I'm not going to do that today. And you've heard already about INPAS and what it is in terms of being guidance for general purpose financial reporting. So that's the whole of entity reporting. Perhaps what we haven't said in the discussion so far is that it's a principles-based document. And I'm sure that when people start applying it, that's going to bring some challenges with it, because it doesn't tell you exactly what to do. It's not a rule. It will tell you what the principle is, and then you're going to have to do some thinking about how you apply that principle. So I'm sure that is going to introduce some challenges for some, but some real opportunities as well, because rules don't always work when you've got such diverse non-profits. You need a principle to be able to do something specific for your organization. So INPAS covers what you recognize, how you measure it once you have recognized it, how you present it, and additional disclosures that you make. And importantly, as Kenneth mentioned earlier, it also covers what to include in a narrative report. As with any other international accounting standard, it's going to be up to each jurisdiction to decide whether it's going to use it or not, or require its use. And in some, it may be permitting the use. But of course, in some jurisdictions, NPOs may just be able to use it itself. And I see the question about the busting the terminology. NPO is a non-profit organization. So can we move on to the next slide, which is looking at the practice guide. Again, CHAM covered this earlier, so I'm not going to talk too much about this. This is a bit more rules-based than INPAS is, with a standardized format to look to harmonize grant reporting. This is not mandatory, so if you use INPAS, you don't have to use Practice Guide 1, and indeed if you use Practice Guide 1, you don't have to use INPAS. But we have designed them to work together, and perhaps we can move on to the next slide to kind of perhaps just describe that a bit more fully. So we've got these two documents. INPAS is about 300 pages and obviously addressed at the whole of entity level. 300 pages might sound quite daunting, but actually it's a lot less than other full international standards, which run to thousands of pages. So it is quite succinct. The practice guide is an even shorter document in terms of that harmonized reporting that we've talked about. And we have designed the two to work together. So that individual grant reports actually link to the whole of entity reports. And the fantastic thing about that is around the degree of assurance that we can all take that we haven't done a grant report that's independent of the general purpose reform report. They are linked together. And there are anchor points between the two that are set out in the guidance so that they can do that. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. So we've talked about INPAS, we've talked about Practice Guide 1. We haven't talked about two other things that are part of the suite of documents. There is implementation guidance that is there to try and help people get into a bit more about how do you apply those principles that I talked about in INPAS. So it's intended to help with that application. Also in the implementation guidance, there are some illustrative financial statements that are there. They don't cover every permutation that you can possibly think of, but they are there to try and pick up some of the typical kind of activities or transactions that a non-profit might have, and it's designed to work with some illustrative examples that are in the implementation guidance. Not on this slide, but we are also publishing on at a glance documents that are going to basically summarize what's in some of the key sections in there to try and help you work out which ones might be relevant for you. And then the basis for conclusions is a document that explains how we got there. Sam says that I can tell you how we got there. It's in my head, having been through the process, but this document tries to write that down so that anybody doesn't have to ring me up and ask me, because that might be quite a lot of calls, but can use this document to understand what we intended when we did that. And then on to the next slide, please. And this next slide really is kind of a thank you, both to the IFRS Foundation and IFAC. As I said very much earlier, we have based INPAS on IFRS for SMEs, and they very kindly allowed us to use that in developing INPAS. So we very much appreciate their collaboration on this and their willingness to support our endeavours. So not any technical stuff today. I'm sure that there'll be opportunities to drill down into some detail in the future, but that's kind of just a bit of a whistle stop from me. Thank you. Back to you, Sam.
And now I'm delighted to bring in Ian Carruthers, who's been mentioned by various people as we've gone through. So Ian, you're in the final weeks of your role as the chair of the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, and you've been involved in IFR for MPO since right from before it started, and as the chair of the technical advisory group. And now you're going to be the CEO of our new foundation, the International Non-Profit Reporting Foundation. So I'd love you to tell us a bit about that foundation.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's great to be here and lovely to relive that whole journey. And I think actually I'd like to pick up on really the comments that Anna and Jocelyn were making about this is about the next stage of the journey. We've got the guidance. It's now making it live and making it happen. And this is what INPRF is about. It's the home of INPAS going forwards. And so we've been thinking about bigger picture. What are we trying to do? Reminding ourselves really of what we've been thinking about for so long that can now actually come into place. And it's this idea about confidence, best use of resources by MPOs, and above all, social good. That's really, I think, what drives us all. And so that's the vision. The mission is very much about what INPRF will be doing, and so it's about promotion, it's about development. Now, if we can go on to the next slide, what will we be doing in terms of the next few years, and very much taking a rest, if you like, from the standard setting side of things. And it's about promotion, about, you know, the standard being picked up and used globally. We know that actually there's a lot of challenges. Those have been mentioned by Geraldine and others. And obviously we've got the guidance that Karen has just been talking about, but we know we need to do more. And so basically we're going to be working with you and understanding the more detailed guidance you need on how to implement, how to adopt, you know, because there are challenges in jurisdictions in terms of how do you navigate getting this into regulation and so on. And it's not just about us providing guidance, but it's also about you being able to share your experiences. So establishing communities of practice is going to be really super important, and bringing the various different groups together so that we really get that that synthesis of the learning and the experience globally. And we need to make this stand up, and we need to make this work for you going forward. So there's about how we make the organisation fit for the future and sustainable. And if we move on to the next slide, you know, what are we putting in place? Well, above all, INPRF is a membership organisation. We're delighted to have CIPFA and Humentum on board as our founder members, but we want a lot more people involved. This is very much about the MPO community globally. So essentially, you know, any organisation that is a non-profit or is working with non-profits, promoting non-profits, not making a profit itself, you can be members of INPRF. Now, we also have trustees who will be responsible for you know, the actual running and accountability of the organisation. We have 2 trustees already nominated by CIPFA and Humentum, Joyce Tamale, who's the interim chair trustee, and Chris Austin, and both of them bring really great experience to bear already. But we are going to be launching a drive to recruit the other 6 trustees, and very importantly, a permanent chair trustee. So watch out for that coming later in October, alongside the launch event in Geneva. And then, of course, we have the organisation, and as Sam has said, I'm hugely honoured and really delighted to be the inaugural CEO and to be able to continue pushing forward on the journey. Obviously, Sam and Karen are going to be there as well. But I think, and if we can do the last click, I think one of the really important things is everything that's gone before in terms of all that volunteer effort, that's still going to be there. Those voluntary advisory groups are still going to be there. Now more than ever, we need our country champions, as this is really available for you. So we want, you know, we want to work with you. And as we develop the organisation, we really want to bring that diversity, maintain that diversity, and build that diversity of views and experience, and make sure that, back to that vision, this is about social good, and it's about maximising the way in which MPOs can deliver on that. So just fantastic to be part of that journey, and really looking forward to you know, continuing to work with everybody. So Sam, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ian. Yes, so the end of the IFR for MPO project is not the end of INPAS, it's really the beginning of the next chapter. We climbed this huge mountain, but we were in the foothills, and we've got a bigger mountain to climb ahead, which is really exciting. So moving on, what is next? So if you go to the website of the INPRF, inprf.org, you will find that you will, if you can go back to the, yeah. So there's a button saying download INPAS. At the moment it says coming soon, but we know that it will be published this month. And so you will be able to click that button and access INPAS for free. You'll be able to download the PDF. Now, also you can see on the menus across the top, there's different information about the foundation. There's information about INPAS, including the at-a-glance documents that that Karen mentioned. We have one so far, first of a series. You'll find FAQs in there. And I know there's lots of questions in the chat, which we won't manage to cover today, but you might find some of the answers in the FAQs. We've got news and events. We've got some information about the INPAS development process, which, as Chris mentioned, it's really important for people to understand how this document was created, because that's part of its credibility. And of course, ways in which you can get involved. If we can go to the next slide, if you click download INPAS, you'll get to a form, and you just fill in your details and press submit to download the PDF. And when you do that, there will also be a terms of use document. So if we can go to the next slide, it is really important that if you're going to be using INPAS, then you need to just be checking in about the licensing and translation. This is especially relevant if you're a national standard setter or a regulator in a country and you're looking to adopt INPAS in your country. just do read this first and get in touch. Licenses are free, but it's really important because we are under intellectual property regulations from the IFRS Foundation on which INPAS is based. So it's really important. So do just check that out. And then finally, there's a section on adoption, and there's different resources for different stakeholders. I do here just want to sort of do a little bit of expectation management. Adopting international accounting standards is generally considered. It's a considered process that takes time. Countries might even undergo their own national stakeholder consultation processes to decide the most appropriate pace and scope, and how to support stakeholders in their context. And it also will take some time for the networked infrastructure, if you like, of auditors, of training and software providers to provide that, prepare the support and prepare the products that will support adoption. So that means the time to get cracking is now. We need to get the ball rolling now. Our goal is 10 countries, 10 significant funders, and 10,000 NPOs adopting INPAS by 2030. So the time to start is now. Please do let us know or tag us on social media if you are making progress or steps towards adoption or supporting others adopting, because it really showcases that pioneering energy, and it creates that momentum and it encourages others. Before we wrap up, I'd love to show a short video from B. Lang in Malaysia, and then I'll have a final word.
Good day, everyone. I am Biling from Malaysia. It is with a sense of shared purpose that I join you today for the launch of the International Non-Profit Accounting Standard, INPAS. As a member of the Technical Advisory Group, I have had the opportunity to contribute to the technical development of this initiative, which marks a notable moment for the third sector. INPAS introduces a principle-based framework that reflects sector diversity and operational realities, promoting greater consistency and enhancing the quality of financial communication. This is more than a technical milestone. It represents a collective effort to improve clarity, coherence, and relevance in non-profit financial reporting. Drawing on sector insight and shaped through rigorous consultation, this framework is expected to enhance transparency and stakeholder confidence. INPAS marks a meaningful progress in the evolving non-profit landscape. Congratulations to all who have contributed to this landmark achievement. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to join this historic launch for the sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bilang, for recording that for us. So in our final minutes, people have been asking how to contact us. I think on the next slide, you can see we've got the new website, inprf.org. The old website, the IFR for NPO website, is still active, but we will be sunsetting it. So the new place to go really is the foundation website. That's your home for all current information. We've also got an email there, and there's a contact form on the website as well. Let me take the final minute just to say a huge thank you to all our advisory group members, to all the staff in Humentum and CIPFA as well, who weren't necessarily 100% part of the project, but contributed, to our comms and communications and marketing people who had to try and make an accounting standard sound interesting. Great challenge there for in the sector. Please email us, please get in touch on social media, and a huge thank you. We've ended on time. So well done, everybody. It's been wonderful to hear all your voices. All the best.